Red Rock Resources is a proven explorer and expanding producer, with gold and base metals exploration in Kenya, gold production in Colombia, and early-stage development exploration of iron ore in Greenland. We have Andrew Bell here, Executive Chairman of Red Rock Resources. Hi, Andrew.
Hi.
Now, you've got your results for the year to June 2011. They were good, with pre-tax profits of £13.9 million. Now, is this going to be replicable in the current year?
It's a good question, and one that some shareholders have been asking us. And at first sight, you'd say no, because some of those profits came from a recategorization of associate earnings to available for sale financial assets. And at the point that change takes place, it crystallizes a value for the purpose of accounting, though not for the purpose of tax. The tax crystallization is only when the asset's ultimately sold. However, we do think that part of our model is that as we gradually spin off and dispose of our assets, a bit of that comes through every year. A bit of it came through, in a sense, last year as we went down to below the associate company level in Jupiter Mines. And in the current year, we have prospects of being able to do something similar so that we would get some realization in accounting terms or in real terms, which is quite possible, of some of our assets, combined with which the sales of minerals this year and the profits from the sales of minerals are likely to be a feature. So we can't tell yet, but I would have thought that there's a reasonable prospect that plus or minus last year's results we'd be somewhere in the ballpark.
Andrew, there's a lot of news that's on the way for Red Rock Resources.
I can tell you what it is if you like. I can run through it all.
Okay.
And what we're expecting is, first of all, in Kenya, between now and Christmas, we've indicated that we're expecting the scoping study for the tailings to be completed, and that will lead to a decision to proceed with mining, we hope. But again, before Christmas, we're expecting for at least the KKM part of our Migori gold resource, a new resource figure to come out, and that will lead possibly to, well, we think it'll lead to a pit plan design and possibly a bankable feasibility study next year. That's on Kenya. Now in Colombia, we have a program of improvement and renovation in the mine and the plant there. And we've moved beyond the stage at which we were bringing that into profit. We're now at the stage where we're trying to optimize it and make the mine work that a big company or bigger company would make the mine work, rather than a small operation as it was before.
So the output's not as much to be able to realise further gains going forward because of the...
Well, the danger at this stage is that if you just went ahead with trying to produce a set number of ounces every month, you would be sacrificing the long term to the short term. You'd be trying to scalp a bit here, a bit there. And what we want to do is organize it, and we'll be coming out with a short-term and a medium-term mining plan in the very near future, again I think before Christmas, based on our professionals' visit out there and their conclusions, whereby we'll say, what we think we've got for the next 6 months, and within that 6 months we'll be saying what we think we've got in terms of gold to mine for the next 18 months or so. And and at which levels. And that'll make it clear, I think, that from the existing levels that we've already opened up, there is enough gold to sustain mining operations for some time to come. And this is one of the things I think that will help the market. And so that's Colombia. And in Greenland, as we said, we're about to get the results of the geophysics and the sample results back from the lab from our first year's exploration.
You're quite happy.
Decide whether to go ahead with the next year's. So all of this is coming in a really short, concentrated time span.
So you were happy with what you initially found in Greenland, even though the results hadn't come through?
I think the announcement we've already come out with made it clear that we were pretty happy at that stage, and that was based on the handheld XRF results. Now, our expectation, perhaps, is that the results back from the labs are going to be better than the handheld XRF. And we put that information into a systematic sort of report, and we'll come out with it with full detail. And that'll be very soon. And I think the market, if there'd been something that looked like a big change from what we had already, I think we'd already have come out with it.
So with so much news, why is the market so downbeat?
There are two good reasons for that. One, of course, is the loss of liquidity in the markets and the loss of optimism about commodities, because commodity sentiment reflects what people expect world growth to be, and people have been nervous about what's been happening in Europe and nervous about whether the growth in China can continue. So that's been one impact. The nervousness about the euro has meant banks haven't trusted each other, and that and other factors similar have caused some liquidity to go to the financial system. And it's always these markets for smaller stocks that suffer most in that. A second reason is that our share price maybe got quite high quite quickly last year, at the end of last year. It went up nearly 10 times in 3 months or less. That created a lot of people with locked-in profits and therefore potential sellers. So I think some unwinding of that was not a surprise. And the third reason, I think, was people had high expectations for the initial level of gold production in Colombia. Now, what's actually happened in Colombia is the level of gold production wasn't what we expected when we first started operating. So we replaced the management, exercised our option. But on the other hand, the gold price has gone up, so that the production level that we have is actually quite profitable. So people shouldn't be so pessimistic, because we've actually brought that Colombia into profit-making territory very quickly after we took control. We've taken all the right actions since. There is, on top of that, another reason why the price has gone down, which I think is activity by shorts and people with some agenda. Now, my view on that is quite clear. This isn't just the way that shorts go into chat rooms and make posts without disclosing their interest isn't just illegal and market manipulation. It's always been illegal market manipulation and a crime. It's just that it hasn't been fixed on and attacked in such a way that everyone is aware of it. And if a short goes in there and cooperates with other shorts to try and drive the price down, that's even more clearly a crime. And just as there was a time when making multiple applications for new issues was thought to be just standard practice, then suddenly, overnight, because of one or two of the privatization issues under the last Conservative government, it became recognized that it had always been criminal. So I think this issue of the activity of shorts is one that the authorities are focusing on, and having a company that is willing to go all the distance in uncovering these people and making sure that they do, if necessary, get prosecuted, will perhaps be the trigger point for this, and we are happy to be that company if that's what it comes to.
So, can a stock rise too quickly?
A stock can rise too quickly. The difficulty one has when it rises too quickly is that we are not in the business of telling people what the stock price ought to be. And to some extent, we just have to let nature take its course and remedy any extremes that appear in the market. We always think that the share is undervalued, and that's probably because on a long-term basis it always is.
So should we be putting a negative interpretation on the plateau of gold sales in Colombia at 500 ounces a month?
No, I think we did signpost in advance that we were looking to, once we'd stabilized it, and at 500 ounces a month, the company is making pretty good profits because these are high-grade resources. Once we'd stabilized it and there was no hemorrhaging, which happened really very quickly after we exercised our option, took 51% and took over management, then there would come a phase where we would look into the available information in detail, look at the way the management was operating, bring in one or two experts from Peru that has a very good mining culture, and start fine-tuning the operations, and at the same time look for a phased program of improvements in mine development.
Okay, is Greenland like just a bridge too far, and will Red Rock have the resources financially to be able to live this one?
The next stage of exploration will cost money. We do have that money available, and our business is exploration. So as projects get more mature, we should take some money out of them, take money off the table as we make profits, and put it into our pipeline. And each time we're looking at bigger things and bigger bets, but we don't take bets that would ruin the company. Greenland is something where the upside is much greater than the risk. The impact of exploration on value in a company is a kind of reverse S-shape. The early stages of exploration see a huge rise, and as long as you find something, of course. And then as you go into project delineation, bankable feasibility, development, there are long stages where you don't get news for 6 months or a year. And then as a project comes into production, you get a rise in value again. Now, Greenland is at the early stage where the work we do next year, delineation through drilling, assuming we go ahead, would have huge impact on the value. And so our risk reward is perhaps at its most favorable. So this is something that we probably should do, and if we do it, and if we prove an iron ore project, simply the scale of iron ore projects is so much larger that the impact on the company could be very large. I mean, it's difficult to find a gold project that's ever going to be worth as much as an iron ore project.
In Kenya, there have been signs of opposition to your plans. Now, is this politics or business, and how will it affect you?
Sometimes politics and business can be the same thing, but yes, this is basically politics, and we are not concerned. We are doing all the right things. It is true that our local partner has held the license for quite a long time, but when you look at the grade of those deposits and you look at the break-even level of, for example, Africa Barrick or Anglo Gold Ashanti at North Mara or Geita, big mines south of the border in Tanzania, you can see that until very recently it was extremely difficult, given the prevailing gold prices, to make money out of low-grade projects like that. And in the case of any resource that's been found to date at Migori, the grade is a little lower than that. So understandably, through the 90s, when gold was very low, there was limited exploration. And no one else was exploring in Kenya at that time. So I think that Mid-Migori has a perfectly defensible position and just needs to put the point across. But naturally, now that the gold price is up and now that we're having success, jackals circle about. This is life. It's natural. It happens everywhere in the world, and we're well prepared for it. And we find the people we deal with in the government very professional, and we have no serious concerns.
Yeah, Red Rock Resources, you sponsored the MBI East Africa conference recently. It was the first conference mining conference that Kenya has ever held. Sort of what was your reactions to that experience?
I think us being platinum sponsor and giving a couple of addresses, one by our local team and one by Kamini with myself, that was very useful and valuable because it got us in there, and we have the rights now and have been offered the opportunity to be platinum sponsors next year. And next year should be a much bigger occasion. We already know that some of the things that made this year less large than it might otherwise have been, but it's the first one. And the history of these things is once they get established, a lot of people come, and we think there'll be many more people from Tanzania there next year and many more governmental people involved next year. So the fact that this one was successful and went quite well, despite one or two issues with the weather and the, as you know, means that it was a really worthwhile thing to do, and we did get our message across to a lot of people.
So why do you think the mining industry in Kenya has not really been developed up until the beginning now, I guess? So it's still it's about 1.25% of their industry in Kenya.
Yeah, I mean, the first big project there is going to be the Beach Sands project on the coast, which is going ahead. That's an Australian company, took it over a year ago and has solved the problems that had bedeviled that. The first gold license has just been issued. It's a very small project, but this is a neighbour of ours. And so things are beginning to move, and there's beginning to be more awareness. But there's a lot of issues with ignorance, and we have to tell people how things work. Because, for example, there was a belief among some people that when we were taking our samples out of the country to Tanzania to be tested, we were actually smuggling gold out. And it's not easy to explain. I mean, maybe we just start from the basics and say all the gold that's ever been mined will fit in a room 21 meters by 21 meters by 21 meters. But we have to get people to understand more about the way our industry works, because at every level, ministers, MPs, civil servants, the press, the public, there are misunderstandings. It's very easy for the mining industry to be demonized and always to be in the wrong. So we have started to take a much more active role in educating the public, communicating with people, and we'll have to continue doing even more of that.
So you have to developing a CSR program. So what are the plans for 2012? What can we expect?
We can expect, first of all, I think, a lot of movement on the Kenyan side. We can expect to see, I believe, some improvements in Colombia, and maybe that once we feel that we've got to the next stage in Colombia, we can start looking at expanding our footprint there, because we will have a team that really works. In Kenya, we have a really good team, and predominantly local. We have more geologists than any other company, local geologists, better trained and given more responsibility. In Colombia too, we want to work with local people, which means Colombia and one or two from Peru. And as we get those teams in place and they start to work well, we can expand. And in the same way in Greenland, if we proceed there, we think we'll see a lot of progress. At the same time, our big investment in Jupiter Mines, they will be having the Chipi mine come on stream in South Africa mid-year, and they'll have the Mount Ida feasibility finished by the end of the year. So huge developments on every front in calendar 2012.
When do you think it might be possible that Red Rock Resources will be able to realise any gain from the 1.5% royalty payment from Jupiter?
The 1.5% royalty probably has a value already. There are analogous transactions which have valued royalties like these. As we move towards feasibility and production, the value increases. It's difficult to put a value on it, of course, at the moment, but we are looking, as we've looked in the last year, at ways to do that. And we had a course that we were set on, which might have produced results already. But then something more attractive came along, and now we have a couple of discussions going.
Okay, and of course you're also a director of Jupiter Mines.
Yes, that gives us a window into what's happening there, but I'm very much a non-executive director representing our historic interest, so that I doubt that will be a long-term position.
Okay, thank you very much, Andrew.
Yes.
And thank you, and we'll be watching Red Rock Resources.